Hey everybody, in today's video we're going to be looking at multiplying integers. So to get started, the first thing we need to talk about is the rule. So with integers we have a kind of a trick or a shortcut to help us remember what the rules are, and that's called the tic-tac-toe board. So what you're going to do to set up your tic-tac-toe board is you're going to put pluses going diagonally down. That's kind of like your 3 in a row. And then everything else gets filled in with negatives. Now, what's really nice about this is we now have our multiplying integer rules. So here's what it tells us and here's how to read it. It says a positive times a negative equals a negative. So over here, if you have a positive number times a negative number, you get a negative product. If you go to the next row in your tic-tac-toe board, it says a negative times a positive equals a negative, which means if the first number is a negative number and the second number is a positive number, you get a negative answer. The last rule says that if we have a negative times a negative, you get a positive answer. Now I want you to think about this as kind of like double negatives. Two negatives make a positive. Lastly, you're going to see that there's one more possibility, which is not on the tic-tac-toe board, but that you've been working with your whole life. And that rule is that a positive number times a positive number is a positive product or answer. So if you look down here at this shortcut, it says same signs equals blank answer. Well, if you have two negatives or you have two positives, your answer is going to be positive. So we say same signs equals a positive answer. Whereas if you have different signs, one that's positive and one that's negative, or one that's negative and one that's positive, then you're going to get a negative answer. So let's go ahead and take a look at a few quick examples. If I look at the problem, 4 times 3, what I'm going to see is I have a negative times a positive. Well, if we look over here, a negative times a positive is going to equal a negative. So I'm going to set that up. Then I just multiply like normal. 4 times 3 is 12. So I get an answer or a product of negative 12. If we look at the next example, we have negative 5 times negative 6. Well, using our tic-tac-toe board, a negative times a negative equals a positive. So then I just have to worry about what 5 times 6 is. Well, 5 times 6 is 30. Going on to the next problem, we have 3 integers. Now, when you deal with 3 integers, I recommend you just work left to right, but you may choose how to do it once you get used to integers. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do negative 5 times 2. Well, a negative times a positive equals a negative. So negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. I'm going to bring down my negative 3, and I get negative 10 times negative 3. Well, 2 negatives make a positive, so 10 times 3 is 30. So those are just some quick examples of working with integers. Now we're going to go and take a look at integer word problems where we deal with multiplication and we have to remember the rules. So if you take a look at this problem, it says the temperature dropped 3 degrees Fahrenheit every hour for 6 hours. How much did the temperature drop in all? Well, if you remember when we were adding and subtracting, dropped is a very key indicator that we're dealing with a negative number. But instead of using addition to do negative 3 plus negative 3 plus negative 3, etc. for 6 hours, what we can simply do is if this is happening every hour, we can just do negative 3 times 6. So what we need to do is maybe sketch out a quick tic-tac-toe board. Remember, positives go down the diagonal, and everything else gets filled in with negatives. So if we look at this problem, we have this situation right here. We have a negative times a positive, which means we need to get a negative answer. And then we just have to multiply. 3 times 6 is 18. However, if we go back to the problem, it says how much did the temperature drop in all? Well, it dropped negative, or it went down 18 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 18 degrees Fahrenheit. I got 2 more examples for you before you're on your own. So if we take a look at this problem, this time it says every Friday for 6 weeks, there's 6 again, Max withdrew $20 from his savings account. How much did he withdraw in all? Well, remember, if you are withdrawing money, you're taking it out, which means that this 20 is a negative number. So I can write the multiplication problem. He did 6 weeks. Every week he did $20, and he's withdrawing it or taking it out. So we have the problem 6 times negative 20. Again, if you need or want to, I highly recommend that you draw the tic-tac-toe board to help you remember the rules. In this problem, if you look, we have a positive times a negative. So we have this situation right here. A positive times a negative is going to be a negative answer. Well, 6 times 2 is 12, which means 6 times 20 is 120. So Max withdrew $120, or we have negative $120 to his account. Last example for you guys, and then you can try some on your own. It says 1 month, Charlie made 3 withdrawals for $20 and 1 withdrawal for $80 from his account. How did the withdrawals change the amount in his account? Well, if you look at this problem, it's not all the same amount, which means we're going to have to use more than just multiplication to solve this. We know that withdrawals tells us that this money is going to be negative. So to figure out how much he's withdrawing during these 3 withdrawals, I need to do 3 times negative 20. However, that's not all he did. He made 1 withdrawal for $80, so I need to add that additional withdrawal he made, which is another $80. Notice I'm using that negative to show that withdrawal. So now if we think about our order of operations, we have to multiply first. So I'm going to draw that tic-tac-toe board, putting my positives down at the center, filling everything else in with negatives. I have a positive times a negative, so I'm going to get a negative. 3 times 20 is 60. I'm going to bring down my plus negative 80. Well, when we look at this problem, I got a negative. Negatives go to the left. Plus, I'm adding another negative, so I'm going to the left. When my signs are the same, I add and keep that sign. So I'm going to bring down that negative. 60 plus 80 is 140. So what was the change to Charlie's account? Negative $140. Hopefully that was enough information to get you started with multiplying integers. If you have any questions, let us know.